Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Raising Positive People as part of your membership. So it's really great to be here. Today we're going to be talking about what to do when your child's not listening, and this is a huge topic, so I'm going to try and keep it straightforward but I'm sure there's going to be many examples that you could probably think of, so if you want to follow up with them you can always reach out if you need more information. So as a general rule, and I'm going to assume that your child is physically able to hear and that they haven't got a hearing impairment, and I'm going to assume that they are within the age bracket of 2 years to 10 years old, approximately. If they're outside of that and you want real specific answers to questions, please feel free to message me and I will get those questions answered and some information over to you. But as a general rule, when your child's not listening, it can either be you've asked them to do something and they've just point blank refused or done the opposite. It could be that you're trying to talk to them and they're just, a blank wall. So there are a few different scenarios, but when you're in a scenario where you feel your child really isn't listening to you, you need to ask yourself, are they physically able to listen to me right now? So can they actually hear me? Is there a lot going on right now? Are you out somewhere, soft play, for example, and there's just noise everywhere? Because they're probably going to need a little bit more focus support if that's the case. Are they really distracted? So are they watching TV? Are they fully engrossed in an activity or doing something? Is something going on behind you? It's way more exciting that they're tuning into. So it sounds really obvious, but just being very aware of your surroundings and what's happening to see if they actually can tune into what you're saying. Because obviously if they can't, that needs to be dealt with first. Then you need to look at how are they feeling right now? And you're never going to know 100%, but is it likely that they're quite tired? Is it likely that maybe they're hungry? Do they just need some space and alone time right now? Is it the end of a long day or a long week and they're just, wiped out and want some time for them, which I'm sure we can all relate to. So trying to check in on that level, because again, maybe they do need some space for a little bit, and it's about honoring that space and then coming back to them and approaching them at a different time. Is it that they are kind of zoned out because maybe the way that you're talking to them they don't like? So are you shouting or nagging, or can they tell from your tone that it's not a warm tone and maybe what you're saying is that you're frustrated with them, which again happens all the time and it's completely normal, but the way your child perceives that, they're going to be less motivated to tune into that conversation because they're probably going to think, oh great, here we go again. So they're just zoning out. So be really aware of those things. I would also quickly like to cover how much role modeling goes on around communication in the household. So being really aware of how you communicate with them, with other people, with your partner, in front of them and around them. Are you easily distracted? Are you half on your phone or making dinner while you're having conversations? Of course, there are times when this is going to happen because we're all juggling so many things. But really ask yourself, what is the model of communication that they are witnessing, that is being given to them? Because if it's not really clear for them that this is a communication style and it's about interaction and it's open and there's eye contact and we're engaged and I'm listening to what you're saying and then I'm responding and I really care about what you've got to say, I want to help you and I want to be in this conversation, or is it a bit like, yeah, okay, yeah, all right then, oh, is that what happened over there? Right, yeah, okay. Because that way that we role model those communication styles is going to be what your child picks up on, and that's what they're going to be seeing as their kind of blueprint, their starter for conversations and communication. So try to be really aware of that as well if you're really struggling with the conversational aspect. Make sure that you're providing language as part of your communication that they understand, so that you're not expecting too much of them, that you're aware that they might need a little bit longer to process it. So a really interesting fact, I find it interesting, you might find it boring, is that most children take between 2 and 7 seconds to hear auditory information, for their brains to process it and for them then to respond or come up with a response. Now, if your child's on the lower end of that, so 2 seconds, It's more in line with an adult. So, you know, that conversation is fairly fluid, it's going, it's got a bit of pace to it. If your child's at the lower end, the higher end, sorry, of 7 seconds, which they may be naturally, or they maybe if they are feeling tired, grumpy, hungry, because, you know, they're not feeling at their optimum, 7 seconds is a really long time. You know, if I said to you now, oh, go and pick your shoes up, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a long time to wait for someone to say something back to you, especially if they're not giving you the eye contact and the cues. So of course you ask them again, I've asked you to put your shoes away, and then you might start to feel a bit naggy. And, you know, you're getting annoyed too, because you're feeling like, I've asked you this 100 times and you're giving me nothing. But the thing is, every time we then give some more information, some more verbal auditory information, they then have to start again. So we need to be really aware of that as well. And are we actually giving them enough time to process what we've asked them in terms of responding? Are we giving them too many words? You know, if it was a case of, I want you to put your shoes on in the morning, put your shoes on, shoes. They understand from your tone, maybe you're holding the shoes and kind of waving them, you're putting them down here. It's the time of day, it's a routine. So sometimes we give a lot of words, and depending on the age of your child and where they're at in terms of their development, that could be overwhelming, and it's taking so long to process things, they just think, oh, okay, I'm not going to bother, thanks. Other things could be if it's down to a case if you've asked them continuously to do something and they're ignoring you. So for example, maybe they're drawing on the wall, and you know that they know not to draw on the wall. So in those kind of circumstances, it's really about trying to figure out what's going on here. Because if they know not to draw on the wall and they are drawing on the wall, is it that they feel they're not getting enough attention and they need some attention? Is it that you might have told them not to draw on the wall, but perhaps you're not very consistent with your boundaries, so they're pushing you a little bit on that? Or again, depending on their age, maybe they're trying to exert some sort of control or power over the situation because they don't feel like they have a lot of power and control in their life. You know, for lots of our children, they don't really get much of a say in their day. You know, what they eat, when they eat, what they wear, where they go, who talks to them, who changes them, when they go to the toilet. There are so many things that involve them and their bodies and who they are that are outside of their control. And when we have this real universal underlying need for control and power, and we don't feel we're getting any, we're going to do whatever we can, wherever we can, whenever we can, to get that control. So it could be a case of that, and they're not manipulating you, they're not trying really hard to be bad or naughty, they're fulfilling a need that they have that they don't know how to fulfill in any other way. So we need to look at that and think, okay, maybe we need to give them some more control and power in other areas, so they're not taking control and power from specifically on purpose doing the opposite of what I've asked, or pushing back on boundaries and rules and guidelines. So when you're setting limits and boundaries, communicate them in an effective way so the child understands really clearly what the expectation is, and follow through on it so they know that you're going to be consistent with that. You know, say what you mean what you say. That's what you got to do with kids. It's got to be really, really clear. So be really specific, and you can have real compassion with them, and you can have understanding and validate their feelings, because they don't have to like that boundary. You know, chances are 9 times out of 10 your child will not like the boundary that you put in place, and that's absolutely okay. I would expect that. You know, good, I don't want you to just comply all the time. I'd like you to have your own mind, and you're not okay about that. So we validate that, and we hold space for that, and we empathize with that, but we don't move the boundary, unless in some very rare cases, you know, due to situations, maybe there's a conversation and there's some wiggle room on that boundary from a discussion that takes place and involves your child. But we don't just willy-nilly start shifting boundaries, you know, left, right and centre for that easy ride in the moment, because that's really confusing for children. It gives a sense of unpredictability, and it just means that they're not sure what's going to happen when you mean no and when you mean yes. Or if there's 2 of you involved in parenting and you differ in your parenting approach or your ability to set boundaries, that's going to create confusion for your child as well, and a level of unpredictability. So being conscious of that, aware of that, and working towards that consistency is going to be really key. The last thing I want to cover is when you've got a child who's repetitively seeming to not listen and you feel you've exhausted all things that we've talked about and it's still not happening, there can be a real need, I guess, from us as parents to punish them because we're annoyed. We've got our emotions up, it's frustrating. We have a level of resentment perhaps, and maybe we're following the model that we were parented under, so a punishment-based model. I want you to feel bad about how you made me feel, about not listening, about drawing all over the wall and me having to clean it up and XYZ. But the problem with that is it's just going to push your child further away. You're going to be even more disconnected, and it's going to be a lot harder to have a level of understanding and connection with them so that they then listen. So I would go down more of a discipline route where you're using natural and logical consequences. So if they've drawn on the wall, oh, I can see you've drawn on the wall. We need to draw on the paper. Next time, if you want to do drawing, let me know if you need the paper. Let's clean this off. And they have to then clean it. It's not, you've drawn on the wall, no TV for you. You've drawn on the wall, go to your room. Because the child needs to understand the learning process, and they do not get that when the two things don't marry up, or you've removed a privilege or put a punishment in place, rather than set a natural or logical consequence where they can quite clearly see, I drew on the wall, I need to clean it up. So I hope that makes sense. I wish you good luck in trying out your strategies with helping your child listen to you. If you want any further support, information, clarity on anything I've said, you know where I am to reach out to me.